Hello and welcome back to the Braw Tech Podcast. My name is Amy Kelly and I am delighted to be joined by Colin Hewitt, founder and CEO of Float. So thank you so much for joining me today, Colin. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Good to be here.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So just to kick off, please tell us a little bit more about yourself for our audience so they can get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, I guess I grew up in Northern Ireland, from Belfast originally, and came over to uni, did computer science in Edinburgh at Heriot Watt, and pretty much started a company almost immediately coming out of that. Started a web design company right in the beginning of the early days of the web. I think that was 2002. And I fell in love with Edinburgh and have been there ever since. So I have a family now, and I've lived longer there than I have in Ireland. So I'm an honorary Scot.
Oh, good. And Float is absolutely brilliant. So can you tell us a little bit more about Float and the problem that you solve with it?
Yeah, so we, in my previous business, I was trying to figure out where the bottlenecks were, and one of them was in the finances. Our financial process was I would give our receipts at the end of the month to our accountant in a Tesco shopping bag, and he would take them and then come back at the end of the year, and we'd have a set of accounts which I would not really even bother looking at, just find out how much tax I had to pay and leave it at that. And I read a book called The E-Myth, which is all about how to become a business owner rather than working in your business and finding processes. And I started thinking about it like that. And finances were one of the ones I realized was a bottleneck I needed to sort out. I started looking at it and realized that cash flow was actually one of our biggest challenges. And the way I was doing it was I'd built this spreadsheet which actually came from a personal, me trying to get out of debt. I tried everything, writing it down on a book, what I spend, and nothing really worked until I eventually kind of built a spreadsheet of my personal finances and realized I'm spending more than I'm earning every month. And if I keep doing that, I'm going to end up running out of money. If I spend £100 less than I earn every month, I'll be absolutely fine and I'll get out of debt and everything be good. So I did that, and then I realized that we could use that spreadsheet for our business, but man, it was a pain to do. And I was literally copying a CSV of our bank statement and putting it into a spreadsheet and then matching everything off, and it just took hours, and I was the only one who knew how to do it. I thought there must be a better way. So that was kind of when we started getting the idea of using online accounting, taking all that information that was already there, pulling it out into an app and basically automating all of that. So that's where it was born, and we kind of ended up landing in this world of accounting and accountants, and it wasn't my world at all. But I think what we've been able to bring to it is the other side, which is what is a normal person who doesn't have any financial training want to see about their business finances, and how can we do it in a way they can understand it. So Float is ultimately a cash flow forecasting tool that a business can try and understand exactly where their cash is, what it's going to be at the end of the day, week, month, and project that forwards for as many months as they need to. And it's not done in the traditional way. It's done in what we call direct method forecasting, which it actually looks at every single invoice and bill. And so you can set expected payment dates on those, and you can actually see what if somebody's going to pay me 7 days late, the impact of that on your bank balance. So sometimes that really matters. And other times we're seeing businesses where they have 50, 100K in the bank that they're absolutely delighted with. But they can actually take money out of the bank. We did a demo with somebody yesterday and realized she could hire somebody and take some cash out of the business, still have enough cash, and she just hadn't felt that was something she'd be able to do. So when people see it in that way modeled out in the future, it just gives them a totally different perspective on their own business. So that's what we're trying to do.
And as I told you the other week there, I recommended Float to a friend.
Yes, that's right.
And I got a text from her saying Float is an absolute game changer. And when I saw that message, I actually felt so relieved because she had been really quite anxious. You know, she's running quite a successful business now, but she's a co-founder. And the fact that she was trying to get her head into finances and finance management, and I recommended Float, and she just, you know, when she sent me that, obviously I sent it to you, but just to showcase the impact for a small business, finances are such a anxious part of it. So it was just really, really great.
Yeah, and those are the stories that kind of make it fun, you know, when you see other people actually coming to the product that, you know, haven't been sold directly by me, and they actually get value out of it. Like that's kind of the dream, really.
And you're helping those founders, and you know, just, you know, for me personally, having that friend to be in a better place, like that's such a great thing, to just feel more reassured that you know what's happening with your money, like 100%. And you know, exactly, you were talking about the product there in quite detail. So you know, in terms of how it works, pretty easy to get set up and just get started.
Yeah, that's our whole thing, is that because we almost have a direct to market channel, so we have to get businesses who literally go from, oh my goodness, what's my cash flow doing, to searching for a cash flow solution, to finding it and onboarding themselves. Like it has to be so easy to use. So we've worked a lot on trying to make that process easier. And it's always a bit like, some people still feel like they need a bit of hand holding, but ultimately more and more people are able to go in, connect it to their accounting software and get started and have those aha moments like right out of the gate. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward, and we've really had to work hard at not making it do like a lot of the stuff that a lot of people would like it to do. Like we don't want it to become a spreadsheet, for example, where it's like, you know, we're trying to help people escape that sort of spreadsheet hell, or a really complicated financial reporting solution that only, you know, trained CFOs are able to use. So that's been our kind of North Star in our product, as we've done that. It's like, if we make it too complicated, we have lost. So everything we do is trying to make it simple, but at the same time powerful enough to model out what a business should look like.
And so in the tech ecosystem here in Scotland, there's a lot of really early stage tech startups, or some have been going for a few years, but you've been running Float for 14 years. You know, that is by no means an early stage. So, you know, I'm sure you've seen a lot change over those 14 years, you know, both, you know, across Scotland and the ecosystem here, but within your business as well, because you would have had to adapt so much. Would you be open to just telling us a little bit about the ups and downs, perhaps?
Yeah, the ups and downs
over those 14 years.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we've got enough time, but yeah, I think, you know, the reality was when we started. So we kind of got started in around that 2010. I think was the kind of genesis for us of the idea. I didn't sell my agency until 2012. So I was kind of running it as a side project, just with my co-founder, Phil. And he was kind of doing it part-time as well. Eventually we decided, look, we think there's a business here, and I wanted to really go for it. So that was the first thing. And I think what was interesting was, at the time, there weren't that many. Like, there wasn't a startup culture in the same way. The university had been kind of pioneering, Edinburgh University had been pioneering some early stage kind of events and incubators for startups. So we kind of got exposed to that. I managed to get on a ticket for a Y Combinator event in California called Startup School, and decided to go to that. And that was fantastic. And I think that was the moment for me where I was like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this startup journey. But again, it was very much like everybody's raising money. People were talking about Series A. I didn't even know what a Series A was. There was a whole other language to learn. But yeah, I think the birth of Y Combinator was really something that globally really just got a lot of people interested in startups and that kind of dream. And I think, 14 years on, there's a lot, we've come through quite a lot globally. And I think people are now looking at it slightly differently in terms of like, let's get to profitability before we just raise, endless rounds of funding and eventually sell to some, much larger company. So I think, I imagine for companies that are starting now, the world is a very different place. I think we kind of got sucked in a little bit to that, that just going along with what everybody else was doing. But at the same time, I think we managed to stay on the cautious side of fundraising and not raise too big a round too soon. So we did a lot of smaller funding rounds just to try and make sure we were in control of the people we were bringing in. And I think that saved us, to be honest, from having to. I've seen a lot of companies that have just raised so much money. They maybe raised 5 million out of 25 million valuation, and now they're not profitable, and it just looks like there's not really much of a future for that, because where do you go from there? If 25 million is a big figure to try and go from. So we've been cautious. I think the pandemic was a big reset as well. So that was probably, even though we say 14 years, there's probably 7 years of really, of growth for us. And then the pandemic hitting, that just everything kind of sort of stopped for us, interestingly. And it's partly coincidence of that timing. But at the same time, like every company who has a little bit of churn, there's a sort of plateau line where you're going to, if your revenue stays the same, eventually whatever numbers you get to have customers, if you can't acquire more customers, you're going to hit that kind of plateau where you're losing the same amount as you're bringing in. That happened to us. And so we've been really had to go on this rediscovery journey into changing how the shape of the team is. We had an office in Australia. We had to let some people go. We've been through, quite a big shift in trajectory. And it's been hard, that has, from an ego point of view, it's been hard, like sort of being on that, like we're growing. Every conversation is we're raising more money, we're adding more people, we're getting a bigger office, to, we're actually less people now, we're small, we don't even have an office. And, we've had to rethink everything. But I think I've learned more in the last 3 or 4 years than I have in the previous 10. Just because it's forced us to go into that. What is the problem here? Like, what do we need to fix? And really, that's been the biggest thing has been about learning how to acquire customers and learning how to define like what we're building and our target customer, what we call a customer instance, and it just being previously never having really defined that, and realizing like people that we were targeting at one stage are not the right targets for us. So we tried to, one of our big initial targets was accounting firms. And, we thought that's the way, you reach an accounting firm and then they sell as a partner service to all their clients. But actually, you speak to the majority of accounting firms and ask them how many of them are doing cash flow forecasting as a service regularly for their clients. And, the answer is probably less than 5%. Would be my guess. So all of a sudden we realize we're trying to sell something to a customer that doesn't have a significant pain. But we know, like from the conversation with your friend, that businesses have this pain. So who's helping them and how do we reach them? And that's become our kind of guiding question that we need to figure out. So yeah, it's been fun.
It's been a fun 14 years.
It's been a fun 14 years. I've learned a lot. And I think if you're in it for the growth journey and realizing that there's always more to learn, you start off as a sort of sapling company, and even though there's only a couple of you, you're still the CEO, but you're not really a CEO. You're not. It's very different to you're essentially having to learn what that role needs to be, learn how to hire, learn about your weaknesses, learn what marketing is, learn about sales, learn about product. So yeah, it's been a huge learning journey, and I feel like I'm a very different person now, and there's still a lot to go.
Well, I think it's amazing. You've kept going and adapting and speaking to customers and learning and developing the product. So I think that's great, and it shows, to keep going and to showcase that it's never always standing still. You can always adapt to the market and reposition because you have that great product there. But also, I think what's great about you, Colin, is that you are very open and honest on LinkedIn. So you do present yourself really well, and you talk openly, and when there are harder times and what you're excited about, and loads of really great content. And there are a lot of founders that do shy away from publicly putting themselves out there because, founder-led marketing is so impactful in the beginning. Like, that's something you really could take on to promote your business. But some just, get quite nervous about it. So, what advice do you have for those founders that are just hesitant to start being really proactive on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think, it's a fascinating one, because my view was you wait until you're successful, or until you feel successful. So you wait until you're Gareth Williams, and then you exit for $1 billion. And then you go on the podcast circuit, or then you feel like you have something to offer. And I think that was my view. So just keep your head down, and who are you to say anything? And then when you're successful, you have a platform. And actually, I started noticing, like, there was other people out there that are building in the open, that are on that journey, but they haven't made it yet. And actually, I like hearing from them too. So it kind of got me to thinking, some people, there's a little bit of a sense of like, it's a bit cringy when you see people publicly putting themselves out there. But in the same time, those people have kind of gone through that barrier where they just don't care, so you have to kind of care less about what other people think. And I kind of instinctively had this sense of, that I think I need to do that too. I need to get over myself. I need to be willing to, like you say, founder-led companies do have a strong impact, and it is a really good platform. And if we're looking at growth, where's the one place that I can add value that nobody else can in our company? It's like being the face of the brand and talking about what we're building. And it's like, can I do that? It's like, I can if I can get over myself. And so I knew that I had to, but I didn't know how to. And I started looking at other people who were doing that. And I actually went on a couple of courses. There's a guy called David Hyatt who runs he's run a couple of companies that I've always admired. And he started talking in the pandemic about, he had a course called the Keyboard CEO, which I'd really recommend actually. And that is all about, what he calls letting the handbrake off. So, you start writing something and you just think, oh, somebody's going to think that's bullshit, or somebody's going to think I'm, who do you think you are? And the handbrake goes back on again and you stop. And actually it's just about like trusting that, look, I'm maybe a bit further on than some other people. I've got some stuff that I can bring, and I'm just going to do it. And some people might think, who the hell's that guy? But other people might appreciate it. And so it's just kind of letting go, really. So I think that course was really helpful. I did it in the pandemic. And I think a couple other of their courses, just realizing like, on LinkedIn, there's something like, is it 100 million users, and only 1 million of them regularly produce content. So if you're regularly producing content on LinkedIn, you're in the 1%. And what an opportunity to be in that 1%. It's not going to stay like that forever. And I think for me, compared to something like Twitter or X, it felt like LinkedIn was a better place to go. So I kind of came to it at the right time, and just made a commitment to it and started writing. And actually the great thing is, you look back and you think, oh, that was, what was I thinking? But it's only when you get started that you start looking for, how can I get better? And you also get a great signal in terms of if a post bombs or it doesn't do well, or one does, you can kind of start to understand why. But if you're just sitting on the sidelines, you're not really in the game. You're not really learning why. How could I do that better? And I think once you have to post, or you've told yourself I'm going to post 3 times a week, or once a week, or once a day, whatever it is, you're very much more aware of like what what am I going to write about? And so your brain starts sort of subconsciously thinking about it more. So that's been a commitment that I've made. So thank you for saying that. But yeah, somebody said, like, there's not enough. Think about other CEOs in Scotland. There's not enough people that are actually doing that. And yeah, I think it's I've learned a lot about what not to do. And the ultimate thing is try and add value. So, it's not about, like, for me, it's not about finding something to moan about or finding something to, to brag about. It's actually just like, what have I learned? How can I add value, and put something out that would be useful for somebody to read, and try and be focused a bit on that as well. So, yeah, I've enjoyed that process. And I think the next threshold for me is video. Again, it's one thing to write a post, it's another thing to be putting yourself out there from a video point of view. So I think,
good thing you came on the Braw Tech Podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
for anyone listening, you should go to YouTube.
Maybe
and watch
I have a face for radio, but I think it is just, again, getting comfortable with video. And some people are having huge success on TikTok. Again, that's not something we've committed to yet, but it is that thing of, like, you just have to commit to it, and ultimately you're going to get better.
Yeah, and I think that we probably overthink our own content. You're just sitting, all these people are going to think that. At the end of the day, most people don't really care.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you just have that fuck it mentality and just post it. And just starting being active.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've spoken to many, many founders, and I've just been like, just pretend nobody cares and just post what you need to post and get started. Obviously within reason, depending on what you're posting. But it is such a great way to build awareness on your business, because you are the brand and you're representing that. And I think that you've done a great job of that, Colin. So
thank you. Well, yeah, we're passionate I'm passionate about what we're building. I love I love the opportunity to have a platform and to be able to talk about it. So yeah, it feels like it's funny now, because sometimes, like, we'll schedule posts. So our team will work on a post together. We'll repurpose some previous content. And sometimes I actually want to say something. And it's like, well, you can't, because you only do one post a day on LinkedIn. So I'm like, where am I going to share this thought that I had that, like, I wanted to say today, and I can't actually say it because there's no slots. So actually, like, having a platform, time for you, Colin. I know, having a platform is a privilege as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be careful with it for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the support in Scotland. So, what we've been passionate about showcasing on the Braw Tech Podcast is, in Scotland, there is a thriving tech ecosystem. There's a lot of different places to go if you're actively trying to find that support. So what's your experience been like, and do you have any advice or tips for founders?
Yeah, I think the early days for me we were early into TechCube, which was the kind of precursor to Codebase in Edinburgh, and literally we're one of the first companies in the door, and it was a bit like this, actually, very kind of there was nothing apart from internet, and it was great, because you got to know other companies, and that camaraderie felt fantastic. I think, obviously what Barclays have come in and done with Eagle Labs is a big thing. I think just, finding other founders there's something really special about that. There are just so many events that are happening now that I think that can happen. I think that's probably where I would start. I think what groups like Foras are doing with taking group people away to different events, another fantastic resource. I was lucky enough to go to San Francisco with them. Yeah, I think you find the community, because there's nothing like talking to other founders. I was just out for lunch today with Ewan from Willow. I'm going to see Alan from Crucial later on. There's a great, those are just fantastic conversations to really kind of get into it in a way that you can't get into with other people. I've got that network in Edinburgh as well, and we even like I'll even have folks over to our house, and for a fire, we'll have a fire in the garden, and we'll just talk together about what's going on and what the hard things are, and there's usually something. But yeah, I think what else? There's there's a lot of education now that's been provided too. I think Scotland is it's small enough that you can feel like you can meet people pretty quickly. So I think you don't have to look too far, and once you're kind of in a space, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, definitely that community aspect has been quite powerful, and just how much everyone seems very willing to help each other across the founder community in Scotland. And I think that it probably comes with just all being in the same boat and having that empathy for each other.
Yeah.
So what's next in store for Float, and what are you excited about right now?
Yeah, so we've been working really hard on the product side of things, just to kind of get that. For us, the performance of the app is really important, but we've been building a lot around our models and our like how we can make it easy to like if you want to do a quick scenario, like what would happen if our sales increased by 5%. We just launched that as a feature. So the product's really ticking along nicely now. We've got a really clear roadmap of what happens next for that. I think from a practical point of view, we're realizing that sales is another big learning curve for us as we've kind of started with marketing. We're realizing that actually a lot of our product was just product-led growth. So people would come to the product, self-serve their way through. Now we're finding there's groups of CFOs that are coming through that need a bit more hand-holding, that they're just checking it out. We're doing a lot of content for CFOs, especially fractional CFOs who are working with multiple businesses and don't have time to be doing a lot of spreadsheet modeling. So the sales cycle for that is a lot longer. So building our resources there, we haven't had to do that as much in the past. So I think it's almost like we've been on a bit of a reset, being very clear on who our customer is, exploring how to acquire them, how to educate, and it feels like we're on the cusp again of the next phase of growth, which is really exciting. And we're doing it out of a place of profitability as well, which is also a nice place to be.
Amazing. And we ask everyone to give a shout out to a founder or a startup somewhere else in the world, not in Scotland, so that we can connect globally. So who would you like to give your shout out to?
I would like to give my shout out to a good friend of mine, Jono West, who is one of the founders of a company called Mobile Power, and they're doing loads of work in Africa with their battery technology to help motorbikes and charging stations and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really cool technology making a big difference over in Africa.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Colin. We have 2 more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, what's your best advice for fellow founders who are at the beginning of their startup journey?
Yeah, I think now people would say, it's really important to figure out what you want from the business, because it used to be like a no-brainer that you would just go and try and raise money immediately. I think there's now so many resources that you can use to get an early prototype. And if you can get a prototype built and tested then before you raise money using like AI, no-code solutions, it's a great place to be before you've actually gone out and done that first round and figured out, is there a market actually here? I think a lot of people get excited about the product, and really the 90% of the time the challenge is is there a market for this? So if you can even start by building an email newsletter or a blog or anything where you're actually, can I compete? Are people finding me? Are people interested in what I'm writing about? I would start there rather than jumping into, I'm going to raise money, I'm going to get a grant, I'm going to build this product, because it just gets really distracting. And actually, if you can keep focused on the market and try and like find ways of validating, is this a real problem, or is this just am I just sort of fantasizing that we'll build this solution and the market will come? Kind of what we did. But we did have some signals actually, which, we're building for ourselves. But I think it's still, you can never assume that your market is the same as you. So you have to, if you can validate it some way first, that would be I really encourage everybody that I mentor to do that first. And the book I recommend for that is called The Mom Test, which it's really, the premise is that if you ask anybody close to you, hey, do you think this is a good idea for a startup? They're probably going to say yes. When the reality is, would they buy it? They might not do, but they don't want to offend you. So how do you actually ask good questions and do proper customer research to find out, like, oh my God, that's a solution that I would pay for. So I'd recommend that book. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I have one more question for you, Colin. That's great advice. So thank you for sharing that. What's one word that you would use to describe your founder journey?
One word, adventure.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy adventure so far.
Yeah. and I think, I know this is not more than one word, but the reason for that is it's all about, for me, the founder journey is about finding like happiness in the journey. It's easy to think I'm just gonna like work my butt off for 7 to 10 years and be miserable, but I'll get an exit and then I'll be done with it, and then I'm out the other end and I can do what I want then. And I just think that I've seen so many people where it doesn't work for. They're miserable, their relationships struggle, their health struggles, and actually, if they do even sell, they're still the same person. Really the founder journey is an opportunity to work on yourself and figure out that, how you deal with stress, how you deal with obstacles, how you deal with people. That's the real opportunity to upskill. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at, sort of realizing like, I don't know what the outcome's going to be for Float, but I know that at the end of the day, it's about me being happy and enjoying life. And so, yeah, I think that if you see it as an adventure, then everything that comes at you is an opportunity to learn, and you just keep that mindset, and yeah, don't resent it, embrace it like it's happening for you. It's a gift.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer. I love that. So thank you so much for coming on the Braw Tech Podcast, Colin. We really appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate all of your support on the Braw Tech Podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. This series is produced by Duke, and if you would like to find out more, please go to dukeagency.com.